Okay. So to start things off, if you want to tell us a little bit about what it was like when you went to school, how old you were when you started, the different kinds of schools you went to.
I'm not sure I remember how old I was. I think I started in the fall of 1938. That would have made me 6. However, I was born in November, so I guess I wasn't 6 until my birthday in November in school, so I really don't know.
Yeah.
But I lived in Upper Frederick Township, Montgomery County, and they had, I think, 4 one-room schools within the township. And the school I went to was called Stetler's School because it was on a Stetler land area that I guess the school district bought from him, or that family. And it was on what is now known as Fagley'sville Road, off of Route 73. There was a tavern on 73 called Green Tree Tavern. And it was about at that point where that road turned right going toward Schwenksville on Route 73. Okay. Back there, 1/16 of a mile or something. It wasn't far, but I lived in Frederick at the corner of Colonial Road. Maybe I already said that. I do this over.
Not on here, yeah.
Colonial Road and Route 73.
Right by the auntie's house.
It's the road that we now take to get to the auntie's house. And by the way, the auntie's house was there when I was a kid. And I knew about it, and I was so excited that this was in my neighborhood. And there was we're digressing here, there was a Montgomery County history that was used in the schools. They've eliminated Montgomery County history a long time ago. And in there was a photograph of this auntie's house that was in Frederick. And I just thought, I really felt I was a celebrity almost, you know. But I was easily impressed. I lived in this big farmhouse. It was a half of a double house. The one half of it was a country store, a store and post office, owned and operated by my Uncle Howard, whom I called Unk, and he called me Snakes, which would be snakes with just slurring it. Yeah, he'd always call me Snakes. Why, I don't know. And my father was a farmer. He farmed the ground that went with this store property. Was originally Stetler owned, and Stetlers were a big part of the history of Frederick, the little town of Frederick. Had to walk to school.
How far?
Well, from Colonial Road to Fagley'sville Road. Someday I should really clock that and see, and then I could still drive in and determine the mileage. It was walkable, but it wasn't very pleasant in the wintertime. And I had a girlfriend who lived across the street who was a year older than me, so she went to the same school. And but often my dad, who was a farmer and had flexible hours, would take us to school and even pick us up. Not like every day.
In a car or a truck?
In the car. Uh-huh. I guess he had a truck. Maybe he would have used the truck. It depended. And maybe he would arrange his schedule that he would be going to the mill, which would have been in Delphi, which is near above Zieglerville, and that he could pick us up on the way home. I don't remember those details. School was from 8:30 to 3 or 8 to 3. I don't remember. I think 8:30. We had lunch at 12, from 12 to 1, and then we had a recess, a morning recess, which I think it was a half hour, but I'm not sure of the exact hours. And we were dismissed at 3:30.
So was this a public school?
This was public. This was Upper Frederick School District. We had I had one teacher for 8 years. And, the bell was a bell, like a brass bell that, I don't know what they're called.
Yeah.
School bells.
Yeah.
And he would ring that when we were to come in from recess. And
do you remember his name?
Yes, I do. His name was Wallace Drayhouse. He lived in the Zieglerville area. He drove a Plymouth car that he parked on the playground lot next to the coal house, where the coal for the school furnace was, which was a stove right inside the door. The exit, the only exit to the building is where the stove was. Now, wasn't that good planning?
Oh, sure.
We had fire drills. I guess they were mandated, and I guess he determined it. He would ring the bell and say fire drill, and he would go to the front window. Window's only on one side. He would go to the front window, which would have been the farthest distance from the stove, and he would open it and put a chair in front of the window, and he'd help us. Now, we hardly ever went all the way out. It was just routine. So that was fire drill in the late 30s and early 40s.
Huh.
He was an elderly man, sort of elderly. And we called him teacher. That's it. Teacher. And if we needed to, there were 2 privies on the property. One for the boys and one for the girls. And we girls, this sounds horrible, we would eat our lunch in the privy.
Why?
Because we did. We didn't even think of it. And I thought about this the other day when I had a sandwich. I was eating my lunch and I needed to use the bathroom. I laid it down on the table and I went to the bathroom and I washed my hands. We had a pump at school, cold water pump. I don't remember anybody ever washing their hands.
Really?
Now, in the schoolhouse, there was a vestibule. There was an entrance and then a step up and then a vestibule, which they called the boys' vestibule. And then they had a little closet with shelves to put their lunch cutters. And there was a bucket of water with a dipper in there. I guess every morning somebody filled that bucket, whether it was the teacher or whether it was one of the big boys, I don't know. Maybe either. And that's where, there was a closet in each vestibule. The girls also had a vestibule. And you had a cup or something that you brought from home. So that's how.
So that bucket was for drinking water?
That bucket was for drinking water, and we ladled the water into our personal cup.
And would you keep that with you at your desk?
No, you put that in this little cubby hole in this, what we called the girls' vestibule, which was a storage closet. But there was a little cabinet. Unfortunately now the buildings are gone.
Yeah. So what were the desks like? Was it one long desk?
They were one-person desks, but 2 could sit in it. They were about this wide. That doesn't show you an awful lot. And the school kids had little heinies. And but we were assigned one desk. And it had an opening where you could put your books in. It was somewhat slanted. There was a slot for your pen or pencil. There was an inkwell, which we did not use. I think ink got to be too sloppy after a while. They were all stained with ink. And I don't remember that we ever did any work with ink. I think we had to. I should call my friend Jeanette, who's a year older than me. She's still living, and she's pretty sharp. She lives at Frederick Living. I have to call her. She said, we need to talk every now and then. So
did you use pencil then, or?
Yeah, we used pencils. And we got a pencil periodically from the school district. We got a pack of crayons periodically. Maybe we got 2 of those a year. Pencils, maybe we got more often. We got tablets, and there was all manner of drawing construction paper and things like that in what we called the library. I'll explain that too, which was, today if you had one, you might call it a dresser. It had a little shelf area and a cabinets below, or a 2-door cabinet below with shelf, and in there was mimeograph type paper. We had, and then above it were books. That was the library.
How many books do you think were in the library?
Well, how many books? Okay, it was a section about as big as that, the 2 sections there.
So probably fewer than 50?
I would imagine. We used, the only book I can remember being in there was Little Black Sambo.
Oh my.
I think there possibly was another place where there was a bookshelf with older books. We probably weren't paying attention to them.
Did you have a textbook?
We had a book for reading, maybe spelling sometimes, arithmetic, history. I hated. And I don't remember anything about English, but there had to be some English training.
Yeah.
And an art book, which is the one I liked best. We never did anything with it, but I liked to have it in my hand. I used to redraw the things that were in there, but they were stick drawings. So education was not a strong point, but, and I'll mention this, the teacher was deaf. Not totally deaf, but he was hard of hearing. We ate our lunch at our desks or outside, it didn't matter. And the teacher ate his lunch at his desk. And he said, you can come sit in the front row and we talked. And I can remember in the summertime or in the fall, he would bring these little, we call them cherry tomatoes today, but they were shaped like a pear. And they were yellow. And I see them in the market again now.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen them for years.
I thought those were new.
Yeah.
Huh.
And as I said, we called him teacher. And we'd play on the playground, made up our own games. The guys and girls had a baseball diamond on the other side of the school where there were no windows. And we used old fence rails for bats.
Is that why there were no windows?
I can't imagine that the school district thought that far. I don't know whether, I guess one of the guys brought a baseball or a
So how many students were in that one building?
36 were the most I remember. That's 1 to 8.
1 to 8.
When in my class there were 5 of us.
What were
Dan
the
Ganoski, Bill Michanis. I can't think of any others right now.
Huh. So that half boys and girls?
I think there were about 3 and 2 in my class. My girlfriend, Jeanette, who I just referred to, she was the only one in her class.
Oh my gosh. So did she just sort of get lumped in with other?
No, I don't know. I really don't know.
Huh.
She never sat in on our. And like spelling, we had spelling bees, and that included, I guess maybe he took 5th and 6th, and maybe, I don't know, or 7th and 8th, and then we would trap. You know what that is? If you're next to me and I spelled the word, and then the teacher gave you a new word, and you couldn't spell it, you had to, I guess, go to the end. I don't know, but they called it trapping. And I thought of that some time ago, and I don't know how that worked.
Yeah.
But I think that was a Friday exercise.
So how did the teacher control kids all the way?
He didn't.
So
it was always a hubbub.
Really? I guess I always imagined schools like that as being perfectly silent and disciplined.
You would hope, and I think it was just his philosophy. And I can remember him sitting at his desk or even standing up, and he was disgusted, and he'd say, "Up," or "Be quiet," or something like that. "Up and down and in and out." That was the words he used to describe what we were doing.
So the school only went to 8th grade then?
Mm-hmm.
So there was no kindergarten?
No.
So you started in 1st and the school went through till 8th. And then what happened to people at that point? Did some people just stop then, or?
Well, my cousin, John, who was a couple years older than me, he went to Pottstown High School. Somehow he found transportation to New Hanover Square in, I don't know what that's officially called. But he found his way. Maybe his father took him, and then there was a public bus, I think, from there that went into Pottstown. And then, of course, when he got to be 16, he drove.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then, so did were there options close by?
You could
To
go,
go-
you mean for high school? You
Yeah.
could go any place, the township paid your tuition. You could go to Boyertown or Pottstown, that's the only two that I know of, but I guess if you wanted to go to Schwenksville or any, but not transportation.
Oh. So did you stop after 8th grade?
No, by the time I graduated from 8th grade in the township schools, the township provided bus to East Greenville High School.
Oh.
Boy, we could go to East Greenville or Pennsburg. And my uncle was on the bank board in East Greenville, or bank, I don't know what you call it, the directors, a bank director. He said, go to East Greenville, they got a better school. And he was right. I mean, they're all one. They've been all one for a long while.
And what was it like making the transition? I
I'll tell
assume
you
that
what.
was more than a one room.
Oh, yeah, it was a, we had to move from class to class and what have you, which was a new concept for me. And I was timid, you'll never believe that.
No.
I was very timid. Going to my grandmother's, I wouldn't talk for a couple hours.
Really?
We were there. She'd ask if you want some candy, and I would say no. You know, and I contrast
So
myself.
you've gotten over that.
I've gotten over that. I've accomplished something in my life. Anyway, we were bused to East Greenville, and the first day I went home from school. I think I had to walk a distance from my house down to Fegleysville Road. Or I took my bicycle, and people who lived on the corner there, Mr. Grubb, he said, you can put your bicycle in my garage,
Oh.
which was nice.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knew everybody.
Right.
Well, anyway, I went home, and I said to my mother, I'm not going back.
After your first day in high
And
school.
the first day, she said, oh, yes, you are. And that was all. The next morning, I got up, and I got dressed, and, I went back. And, of course, I never regretted it. And soon, it wasn't long, I was, gung-ho. And I liked it, and I did quite well. I was never an honor student, but I didn't know how to study, and I just didn't know how to study.
Right. Yeah. So
And my parents were not intellectuals, my mother never went any further than 8th grade, and neither did my dad.
So you must have met a lot of people that you had never met before in high school.
All of them.
All of them.
There were some of the kids on the bus. Now, there's Billy Michamas, who I went, and Dan Ganoski. I still know Dan. I saw Dan about a year ago. We had a reunion, and he's out of it.
Oh.
But he has a keeper. He moved to Canada because of his health.
Huh.
You get free health in Canada. And his assistant brought him to this reunion, but he was, maybe he got it mentally, but he was so physically poor. And he had a restaurant as his business. So he must have done well on his meager education. I don't think he went to college, that he could afford to retire. And he married, had some sort of a family, I don't know, and retired to Canada, And it also takes some initiative, and how he got that, I don't know.
Yeah. So the people that you met in high school was it surprising to you? Was there anything different about them than the people that you were used to being with?
Well, other than I didn't know them, and I got to know them. I never made a lot of friends. I wasn't sports oriented. I despised gym. You didn't have to take gym if it was your period. I had a period every week. She caught on to that pretty quick. But
yep, I remember that happening in my school too.
so, but I got to like it, and I got to be, I was a great fan of East Greenville High School.
Great.
I went to the football games when I could find a way, and I thought it was great. I thought it was the best high school in the world,
Excellent.
And I liked my teachers.
Favorite subject? Was it still art?
It was still art, and we had for an art teacher. Not the first year, I don't think. That was a Mr. Miller, and art was in the basement of the cafeteria where you ate your lunch. So that art classes had to be. And one thing I remember him saying, Do you see that fire extinguisher over there? Draw it. It was one of these,
Really?
you know.
Uh-huh.
He was very nice, but you never touch any art. And then we had a Miss Huntsberger who was a killer. All the guys, you could take music or art. All the guys took art.
Because of her?
Yeah. She was really cute. I mean, she really was cute.
So you're a very good writer. Did you learn that in school, or is that something you developed later?
I think so. I think I picked that up. Maybe trying to write, wanting to write, and then I would, after I was married, I could ask Abe, because, you know, he would say, well, don't phrase it that way, phrase it this way.
Okay, because